On the first day of returning to the wealthy family, I slapped everyone in the face. In the previous second, my biological parents were still full of jokes. They said that I grew up in an orphanage and would definitely not have a place in the family. Therefore, they comforted the crying, fake young master and told him that I came back just for marriage. However, in the next second, I made the fake young master speechless. "Have you seen your biological mother?" I looked at him coldly. "I have seen her. She came to me and knelt down, begging me not to kick you out of the Wong family. Do you know why? Because she has AIDS and needs medical expenses. She's afraid that if you leave the Wong family, she will have no money to treat the disease." "Ryan, have you given her money?" Ryan was stunned and stood there, unable to say anything. I ignored him and continued. "Do you know what your biological father's last name is? Do you want me to tell you?" Wong's cousin couldn't stand it anymore and raised her hand to slap him. "Stop it." "Pa!" A crisp slap sounded, but the slap didn't hit me, but a plate hit her head hard, and the fragments scattered. Bright red blood flowed from her hair, and her originally vicious eyes instantly became horrified, and then a look of cherishment. I patted the debris on my hands and looked at her coldly. "What do you want to do? Want to hit me? Who do you think you are? How dare you hit me?" I looked up and down at the woman and said with disgust, "You are so ugly. I doubt whether you are my biological child. Otherwise, you can also go for a paternity test, just in time with your cousin." I turned my head to look at Ryan behind her and asked lightly, "Ryan, what do you think?" Ryan suddenly raised his head and stared at me, his eyes full of anger and complex emotions, as if he wanted to cut me into pieces, but in the end he just held his head and screamed. At this time, Grandma glared at me, and I knew she was dissatisfied with me. "I know you have something against Ryan. After all, you are brothers, and you grew up in very different environments. It's normal for you to have resentment, but you have to understand that this is not Ryan's fault. Whatever the Wong family owes you, we elders will compensate you. But you can't just bully your brother because of this." Her voice was sharp and harsh. "Did you raise me?" I responded coldly. "Do you want to act like an elder to me?" The director of the orphanage was almost concussed by me, so I let him call him Grandpa. "Otherwise, old lady, let me hit him once, and I will call you Grandma. How about it?" Grandma was stunned. Her face became extremely ugly. "What did you say?" Ryan's eyes widened and his mouth opened wide, as if he couldn't believe I dared to say that. "Are you crazy? How can you say that to Grandma?" "Who's Grandma?" I asked coldly. "Your grandma? What blood relationship do you and I have? How can we have the same grandma? Don't try to get close to me." At this time, Grandma fell down, holding her chest. The scene suddenly became a mess. Some people started to take medicine, and some people called for doctors. It seemed that everything was done as if they had practiced countless times. The original atmosphere of the banquet was completely broken. Everyone was stunned. No one knew what would happen next. After a few minutes, the grandmother was finally rescued, but she was lying on the bed, breathing weakly, and obviously could no longer support her former majesty. She yelled at Catherine like crazy. "Catherine, I'm telling you, no matter you buy him a house in Huaichuan or send him abroad to study, I don't want to see him in the Wong family again. This Catherine is my mother's name." When Catherine heard this, her face turned pale and she replied coldly, "Mom, what are you talking about? I will have a good talk with William." "What are you talking about? What is there to talk about? I don't think he wants to acknowledge me as his grandmother, and he doesn't even take you as his mother seriously." The old lady kept on nagging and scolded him. I was silent the whole time, listening to them talking back and forth like they were watching a farce. I couldn't help it after hearing this, so I suddenly raised my head and said loudly, "I didn't say I didn't acknowledge my mother. I just didn't acknowledge you as my grandmother. After all, my mother hasn't said in person that Ryan is her biological son." As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned, as if they were cast under a spell. I took a step forward, stared at Catherine, and asked, "Why? Are you going to follow that old woman and say that Ryan is your biological son? If so, then I have come to the wrong place." Catherine was stunned on the spot. Her face turned pale and red. Ryan also froze there, like a puppet with his soul taken away. He slowly turned his head and looked at Catherine, his eyes full of disbelief, his voice with a crying tone, and timidly called out, "Mom." But Catherine seemed to be nailed to the spot and didn't dare to look back at all. I stood there, and Catherine and Ryan, who were opposite me, looked like two clowns in my eyes. I didn't feel like the poor son who had been abandoned for many years, but rather like a cold examiner who was high above and out of the loop, waiting to give them a failing grade for their performance, and then kick them out without mercy. Ryan was still confused and didn't understand why he felt this way, but he instinctively knew that he didn't want to be kicked out. Catherine hesitated for a long time before she stammered, "William, don't be so hostile to Ryan. After all, we have raised him for 20 years, even if we are not related by blood." Before she finished speaking, the old lady and Ryan shouted at the same time, abruptly interrupting her words. However, the people present still heard those words, and some collateral relatives who were not clear about the truth could not help but show shocked expressions. The old lady began to have difficulty breathing again, breathing heavily and shouting, "Get him out of here! Since he doesn't recognize me as his grandmother, then my Wong family doesn't recognize him as their grandson." After the old lady finished shouting, she covered her chest and fell into the pillow. Just when the scene was in chaos, the door was suddenly pushed open. Ryan quickly stepped back half a step and whispered, "Dad." The man who came and glanced at the whole place frowned and asked, "What are you all doing here? Don't you know that the old lady needs to rest?" The old lady grabbed the man's hand and cried, "I can't afford to offend your new son. I tell you, Gordon, this family can either have him or me. From now on, Ryan will be my only grandson. If you dare to let him stay in the Wong family, you'll have to wait to collect your mother's body." After that, the old lady closed her eyes, looking adamant and refusing to communicate. The man, Gordon, didn't show any emotion when he heard this. He turned around and looked at me beside the bed, then glanced at everyone and said, "Let's go to the tea room next door for a family meeting." Gordon smiled and continued, "I have to make it clear to you that your grandmother likes Ryan very much, and she is old and can't stand any stimulation. So, even for your grandmother's sake, we will not easily drive Ryan out of the Wong family." When I heard that, I stared at Gordon without showing any weakness and shouted back, "I also have to tell you that I really hate Ryan and that old lady. If you choose them between me and them, then I won't recognize your parents either." I stared straight at Gordon and added, "Do you think I care about your Wong family?" As soon as these words came out, Catherine was stunned, and Ryan was even more incredulous. In the whole Yujo, no one dared to talk to Gordon like this. But I said it anyway, and Gordon was not angry. He stared at me for a long time and suddenly laughed. "Child, don't make this choice so lightly. The old lady you mentioned is my mother. Even if Ryan and I have no blood relationship, he is still your mother, and I who have raised him for 20 years. 20 years. Even if you raise a pet, you will have feelings, let alone a person. You want us to choose between you unconditionally, but it's not that easy." Gordon looked at me. Although he stood taller than me, his eyes were very gentle, and there was a hint of teasing. "Although you say that you don't care about the Wong family, since you are here, it means that the Wong family must have what you want. In this case, why don't you go and get it yourself?" Gordon turned his head and glanced at the hesitant Catherine. After hesitating for a moment, he reached out and patted my head. "Your mother loves you very much, don't doubt it." Catherine's eyes instantly turned red when she heard it. Finally, Gordon made the final decision. "Well, today's party is over before it even started. Go back to your room and have a rest. After sending all the guests away, come out to meet your brothers and sisters." After waiting for all the guests to leave, I went downstairs to meet these so-called brothers and sisters. Hey, when I went downstairs, I saw Eva alone there, like a cunning little fox, hooking her finger at me with a smile, and her tone was as if I was a minion under her command. "Call me sister and let me hear it." I was chewing a steam bun at the time, and the bun smelled very good. While chewing, I didn't even raise my head and directly retorted, "Call me brother first. Just because of Ryan, I call him by his name. Why do I have to be so cheesy when I call you?" As we were talking, there was a chaotic sound of footsteps upstairs. I thought to myself, Maybe they heard that my biological child was coming, so they were very curious and wanted to see what I looked like. Eva was also attracted by the footsteps, stunned, and subconsciously looked up the stairs. I slowly turned around and saw Ryan's eyes were as red as a rabbit. He glared at me fiercely, turned around, and ran away. Grandma was anxiously shouting behind him, "Young master." But Ryan ran so fast as if he didn't hear anything. The old lady was unwilling to give up and even wanted to catch up herself. Fortunately, the person who was supporting her was quick-witted and quickly pulled her back, advising, "Grandma, how old are you? And you still want to chase people on the stairs? This is not allowed. Oh, you're going to piss me off to death." The old lady was so angry that she was shaking all over. She pointed at me with a trembling hand and said to me from half a floor away, "You debt collector, why are you still staying in the Wong family? Who are you calling a fake?" I didn't hesitate and retorted directly, "If I say someone is a fake, then they are fake. And if I say someone is a treasure, I know them. If you want me to get out of the Wong family now, no way." "Grandma, don't get too excited. Be careful not to get sick again." A steady voice came. Although he was interrupted before he finished speaking, the tone was very calm, just like the tone of Gordon I met last night. I looked up and saw a long-haired man. Because of the distance, I couldn't see his face clearly. He held Grandma tightly. It seemed that he was supporting her, but in fact it was more like controlling the old lady in place to prevent her from falling because of being too excited. It was not until the housekeeper hurried over and helped the sighing old lady back upstairs that the man straightened his clothes and walked down slowly. When he came closer, I realized that there was a cold wildness in this man. After a closer look, I understood that this special temperament came from his bones. At first glance, I knew that this man was not easy to mess with. William. His voice was low and emotionless, somewhat similar to Gordon, even less gentle than Gordon. I met his gaze and nodded. "I'm William. My name is Michael, your brother." I called brother crisply. Eva on the side was not happy. She squinted her eyes in dissatisfaction, knocked on the table, and muttered, "What do you mean? Double standards?" However, no one paid any attention to her at all. Michael stared at me for a long while before he spoke slowly. "Have you ever considered that the old man might get so angry that he might fall from the building?" I was not to be outdone. I looked back at him straight and said slowly, "No." "Then you'd better think about it next time." Michael didn't ask any more questions. He just left this sentence and sat down. About half an hour later, all the blood relatives of the Wong family finally gathered at the breakfast table. Gordon sat steadily at the main seat, and Wong's mother and Michael sat at the two sides. Because I had just returned home, I was considered a rarity, so Gordon made an exception and let me sit next to Wong's mother. Opposite me was Uncle Wong, on the other side was Eva, and opposite Eva was Aunt Wong. Just as the breakfast was laid out on the table, before anyone had a chance to start eating, Aunt Wong Air started to speak in a sarcastic tone, like a firecracker. I made the old lady's favorite buns, but it was all in vain. I was wondering if someone had made the old lady so angry that she had to lie down in bed early in the morning. How could she still have the nerve to eat happily here? As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere at the table seemed to be frozen, so cold that ice chips could fall off. However, some people seemed to be oblivious to the atmosphere and ate their breakfast by themselves. But some people couldn't help but say, "Didn't someone bring in the breakfast?" Ryan was there with her, and Mom was fine. The day after his own grandson came back, he was so angry that he didn't want to sit at the dinner table. "You call this nothing?" Aunt Wong kept firing like a machine gun. "You still have a nerve to mention Ryan. Ryan is so pitiful. Before yesterday, he was the treasure of the Wong family. As soon as this biological son came back, he immediately took Ryan's seat. Ryan couldn't even sit at the dinner table, and he had to help you appease the old lady who was upset by his own grandson. Don't let me say, sister-in-law, as parents, you can't be so partial." Second aunt. It was Michael who was speaking. He was slowly adding porridge to his bowl and said nonchalantly, "Is breakfast not ready? Do you still have time to chat with my mother?" This seemed to be a light-hearted remark, but it was actually very aggressive, almost pointing at second Aunt Wong's nose and scolding her. Second Aunt Wong blushed, slapped her chopsticks, and yelled, "Why? I can't talk at home, right? DeBeo, you're usually a sensible person. Why are you standing on William's side? Is blood relationship so important? Ryan has been calling you brother and sister for so many years, and you are so cold-blooded?" With a click, a louder slapping sound than hers was heard. It turned out to be Eva. She put the bowl heavily on the table, raised her head, stared at Aunt Wong, and said bluntly, "Aunt, my father hasn't spoken yet. Is it your turn to teach my brother a lesson?" At this time, Uncle Wong had to speak up. "Eva, how can you talk to your elders like this? When your brother comes, you also lose your manners. Have you been infected with the bad habit of not knowing manners? You're going too far." My mother couldn't hold it in any longer and immediately retorted, "William has only been back to the Wong family for a few days, and you and your wife are already looking down on him in every way. Is this reasonable? Who can stand this? He made a scene right after he came back. Does he really think he is the Monkey King?" Aunt Wong yelled, "Was that William's idea? It was you, my sister-in-law, who gave us the bad idea to hide the truth and claim that both of them are our biological sons. Otherwise, we would have explained it to everyone before William came back, and there would be no such thing." Aunt Wong's face turned red, and she wanted to argue. "How dare you say that? I raised Ryan for 20 years, and now you don't recognize him. How can you be so heartless? What do you mean by not recognizing him? Is an adopted son no longer a son? We treasure him just as much," the mother explained. "How can they be the same? Turning a biological son into an adopted one. Isn't that obviously embarrassing for Ryan?" Aunt Wong wouldn't give in. "Hey, second aunt." I put the spoon heavily on the plate, making a crisp sound, stared at second Aunt Wong across from me with a sharp gaze, and said slowly, "So, this idea was yours?" Aunt Wong, who was originally preparing to continue arguing with my mother, seemed to be electrocuted the moment her eyes met mine. Her whole body trembled, and she forgot everything that was on her lips. Many years later, Aunt Wong, who was already gray-haired, was still frightened when she told her grandson about this past event. That look was like that of a wild beast or an inhuman evil god. He stared coldly at an ant that offended him. That disgust was light, yet chilling. He was just an evil guy. No wonder Yujo was turned upside down because of him, and even the one family was almost destroyed by him. While cursing me, she did not forget to remind her grandson, "If you meet his descendants in the future, stay away from them. They might have inherited his cruelty, and none of them are good people." However, these are all later stories. At this moment, at the Wong family's dining table, the breakfast was disrupted by a series of arguments before it was even finished. Fortunately, in the end, no one started fighting, and my first breakfast at the Wong family was barely over in peace. After dinner, the Wong family members went about their business, but I was stopped by Eva in the garden. "You're amazing. You've caused so much trouble as soon as you came back." Eva looked at me with a smile. I responded without showing any weakness. "Same here. You're not bad at pretending either." Eva's lips curled up slightly, but her eyes were cold. "I ask you, what do you want to do? Whether you are after the Wong family's money, status, or family affection, I don't care. But there is one thing you must remember: don't cause trouble for Michael. In a short period of time this morning, you asked him to clean up the mess for you twice. This is just a small trouble. With your ability to cause trouble, who knows how big a mess you will make in the future. So I'm telling you in advance that all the troubles caused by the younger generations of the Wong family will eventually have to be solved by Michael. I hate this the most, so you'd better be honest and don't cause trouble again, especially don't bother Michael because of your own affairs. Can you do it?" I looked her up and down and said slowly and deliberately, "Oh, so you are so protective of Michael. Do you have some special feelings for him? You're not a brother complex, are you?" The corner of Eva's mouth twitched, and she seemed to want to refute, but she held back and said impatiently, "Just tell me whether you understand or not." I responded casually, "Oh, I see." Seeing that I agreed so readily, Eva was a little surprised, and her expression softened a lot. Then, she took out a card from somewhere and handed it to me. "After all, you are my brother. This is a gift for you. There are 2 million in it. Use it as pocket money." "What are you doing here?" A clear voice came. I turned around and saw it was Michael. Eva's expression softened instantly, and she called out sweetly, "Brother, are you going to the company?" "Going to the airport on a business trip," Michael said, moving his eyes from Eva to me and waving at me. I walked over obediently, and Michael handed me a card and said, "There's 5 million in it. Take it first. From now on, I will give you 300,000 living expenses every month. You just return to the Wong family. So you may not know that although our family is not short of money, we will not spoil you. You have to work hard to make money by yourself, whether it is to start a business or do something else. If you need startup capital, tell me." I took the card and asked, "What about Ryan? Is he working hard to make money?" Michael looked calm and responded, "He hasn't graduated from college yet, so there is no hard and fast rule that he has to go out to make money. But he has an internship as a designer in the company, and he can occasionally take on some work and earn some pocket money. So, you're only 20 years old, so don't force yourself to work for the time being." At this point, it seemed that he just realized that Ryan, who suddenly became a fake brother, and I were born on the same day. He asked thoughtfully, "Are you in school?" I nodded. "What school?" "North City University." Michael's eyes suddenly became sharp, as if he was a little surprised. Eva, who had just walked over, also stopped, with disbelief written all over her face. "The North City University in North City?" I frowned and glanced at him, feeling puzzled. "Are there other North City universities in our country?" Michael chuckled and seemed to suddenly become interested in me. "That's a coincidence. We are also alumni." His and Eva's tone suddenly became more relaxed. Michael continued to ask while walking, "What major are you studying?" "Fine arts and psychology." Michael paused, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. "These two majors are the Trump majors of North City University. The score requirements should be very high, right?" Eva rolled her eyes beside her, obviously not caring about these. I didn't plan to respond, but changed the subject. "Summer vacation will be over soon. When do you plan to return to school?" "No," I said lightly. "I applied for the exchange student program of Yushan University, and it has been approved. I will stay in Yuzhou next semester." "Yushan University?" Michael nodded. "Yushan is the top university in Yuzhou City. Although it is not as well ranked as North City in the country, it is also considered top." I smiled lightly and thought to myself that everything here is not too bad. Michael seemed to agree with my decision. "Then you can make more friends. Ryan happens to be in Yushan too. You can take care of each other." I didn't respond and continued to keep silent with my head down. Michael observed me, as if waiting for my answer. "If you don't understand, you can ask Ryan." I still didn't respond. He waited patiently for a while. "If you get into trouble outside, you can also ask Ryan for help." I still didn't speak. Eva seemed to have noticed my attitude and chuckled and said, "It seems that you really hate Ryan." I looked at her lightly. "Shouldn't I hate him?" "Whether I should or not, I suggest that you don't hate him." Michael's tone was still calm. "With Grandma here, you can't drive him away from the Wong family. Besides, Mom has loved him for 20 years, so she can't drive him away." He paused here. "So it's useless for you to hate him. It will only make you feel depressed." I sneered, "But I don't feel depressed." I paused, with a chill in my words that could not be ignored. "No one in this world can make me feel depressed, no matter if I like him, or I hate him, or you think Ryan can still live happily with me around. Don't worry, the person who is really depressed will never be me." After saying this, I walked out of the room without looking back. Behind me, Eva didn't say anything for a long time, and suddenly hissed, "This temper is a bit scary." But she added, "At least you won't be bullied, which is good." I ignored them and sneered in my heart. This family is really good at acting. They are too naive to use this trick against me. The next day, everything happened as expected. Grandma and Ryan started to act up again. I walked into the living room and saw a room full of people gathered together. The atmosphere was tense. I quietly walked to Eva's side, and she complained in a low voice, "It's all your fault for causing trouble everywhere." As soon as I arrived at the company, I was called back to attend a family meeting. What kind of meeting? I couldn't help but wonder. "Let's discuss whether you should stay or go," Eva said coldly. I didn't say anything, and my eyes fell on Grandma and Ryan. Gordon angrily, Since you all don't listen to me, then there is no point for me, who is both a mother and a grandmother, to continue staying in the Wong family. Gordon, find another house for me to live with Ryan. It's better than staying here and being mad at your precious son. Ryan immediately pretended to be sensible. His tone was extremely soft. Grandma, you are the backbone of the Wong family. How can you leave? My brother doesn't like me, so I'll leave. Anyway, I have grown up a long time ago and should be independent. The old lady touched his face distressed, her eyes full of pity. How can this be? Our Ryan has been spoiled since he was a child, and he should be grandma's little grandson all his life. Ryan immediately interrupted. It doesn't matter if they don't care about you. Grandma will love you more. The old lady continued to complain. You let Ryan be bullied by William at home and outside, and you also let him swallow his anger. This is how you manage him. Ryan quickly stood up and started to smooth things over. Grandma, don't blame Mom. My brother suffered so much outside and finally came home. He must make up for it. It's all my fault that I couldn't bear to leave you, Mom, Dad, and my brothers and sisters, and I shamelessly continued to stay at home. As he spoke, he cried and shed tears, and his performance was almost believable. The old lady was sobbing out of distress. Catherine hurriedly asked someone to pass her a tissue. Michael stroked Rhina's head and said, You don't have to be so shameless to stay in the Wong family. You will always be your mother's son and your grandmother's grandson. No one will chase you away. Ryan sniffed, looking flattered. Brother, will I always be your brother? I watched this farce with cold eyes and couldn't help laughing in my heart. The people in this family are really good at acting. However, it is too naive to use these little tricks against me. I sat quietly beside Eva, watching this stupid farce. Ryan cried while pretending to be sensible, and the old lady and Catherine were also fighting back and forth, full of tension. The scene was tense for a while, and it was really hard not to laugh. Eva suddenly asked me in a low voice, Are you really not jealous? I was too lazy to pay attention to him and just lowered my head to concentrate on my phone. At this moment, the room suddenly became quiet, and the argument between the old lady and Catherine came to an abrupt end. A servant came in and announced, Olivia is here. Olivia, a woman in a wheelchair, slowly entered the room. She spoke calmly and proposed cooperation to Gordon. The atmosphere in the whole hall suddenly became unusual, and everyone's eyes were focused on her. The condition for cooperation is that William stays in the main house as the second young master of the Wong family. Olivia's voice was clear and firm, with a sense of oppression. When the old lady heard this, she immediately went crazy and pointed at me and yelled, You actually rely on a woman to back you up? Fine, you buy me a house today, and the Wong family will never recognize a shameless descendant like you. Catherine stood up suddenly, staring at the old lady with red eyes, then pulled me up and bowed to the old lady without hesitation. Since my child is so unbearable in your eyes, I will get out of the Wong family with him. Her tone was cold, and her eyes showed a determination that could not be ignored. She also glared at me, signaling me to cooperate quickly. I could only lower my head blankly and did as she was told. Catherine stood up straight, her tone turned cold. As for the divorce you just mentioned, then let's get a divorce. I will prepare the divorce agreement. The three men of the Wong family instantly froze like stone statues, not knowing how to react. Catherine glanced at them coldly, dragged me upstairs, and said, Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and pack your luggage. I said, Oh, in a daze, and held her hand tightly. The sudden warmth made me a little overwhelmed, but I was moved in an indescribable way. Seeing this, Olivia regretfully announced that the cooperation had failed. Before you leave, there is one thing you misunderstood. She looked at the old lady and added coldly, I am willing to do this for William, not because he is a member of the Wong family, but because he is William. After Olivia left, I was thinking about the next plan in my mind. This drama has just begun. I want to see what tricks the Wong family can play. After a while, the old lady realized what had just happened, and she covered her chest and couldn't breathe, her eyes full of anger and disappointment. What does your wife mean? Is she rebelling? Unexpectedly, Gordon responded expressionlessly. It's you who wants to break up this family. At this time, Eva finally spoke. Grandma, I don't want to become a child from a single-parent family. If the paparazzi find out, netizens will say that you are an unreasonable old lady who can't tolerate your own daughter-in-law and grandson. Where you put your old face? After hearing this, the grandmother fainted again, and things became more and more chaotic. Seeing this, Aunt Wang's family did not dare to interrupt and left in a hurry. Only the father and son were left in the living room, and Michael slowly spoke. Dad, do you think Olivia's cooperation plan is really sincere? She is such a greedy woman. Will she really be willing to give us profits? Gordon shook his head. She is a businessman who will not do anything without profit. Let's wait and see. He paused and added, do you remember the villa you bought a few years ago? Let your mother and William move there first and live in peace. After saying this, Gordon seemed a little tired, lowered his head, and sighed deeply. After returning to the room, he looked at me cautiously. You are not really going to divorce me, are you? Catherine's eyes flashed with anger, but she lowered her head involuntarily. Facing Gordon's cold face, she seemed powerless to refute. She turned to me, her expression suddenly softened, with a hint of apology in her eyes. William, let's move to the villa next door for now. Don't worry, I promise I won't let anyone disturb you. I nodded to show that I had no objection. So, Michael drove himself, took Catherine and the large and small bags, and sent us to the white villa next door. Michael glanced at me sideways and asked in confusion, are these the only luggage you have? Aren't you studying painting? If you study painting, you must have the tools you are used to using, as well as drafts and the like. I still answered coldly, I have a lot of things, but they're all stored in the orphanage. I'm not sure if I can bring them here. Catherine looked at me and held my hand distressfully. Why can't you bring your things here, kid? Isn't it natural to leave them at home? I responded calmly. I'm not afraid to bring luggage because I'm timid. I'm just not sure whether you're qualified to be my family. As soon as I finished speaking, Catherine was stunned, and Eva and Gordon, who were moving the luggage, also stopped. Everyone looked at me at the same time, and I continued, I have very strict requirements for my family. How can someone who doesn't have my trust be qualified to keep my precious things? Before I finished speaking, Michael slapped me on the back of my head. Aren't you afraid of hurting your mother's feelings when you talk like this? He said, and his tone softened. Okay, since you are in my territory, I won't let you say these inappropriate words again. Then, his tone turned gentle. Then tell me, what do you want to do to feel at ease to bring your luggage here? I pondered for a few seconds. First of all, I can't live in Wang's house, right? Otherwise, what if the old woman wants to drive me away again? Michael stood up after hearing this. I'll give you this house. I frowned in disapproval. Do I look like the kind of person who would rob someone's house for no reason? You transfer the house to your mother's name. Except for me and my mother, no one is allowed to enter this house without permission, and no one is allowed to come in without saying hello. After that, I turned and went upstairs, leaving the people in the room looking at each other. Catherine covered her face with her hands, her eyes full of regret. It's all my fault. How could I not recognize my own son? If it weren't for me, William wouldn't be like this now. Michael squatted down, held her wrist, and whispered, Mom, it's not that bad, haven't you noticed? Although William is always on guard against us, he is the only one willing to trust you. Eva echoed, Yeah. After all, he finally has some trust in you. Otherwise, why would he ask your brother to transfer the house to Ningxia? Catherine's eyes flashed with surprise. Really? Is William really willing to believe me? At this time, Eva took out a handkerchief from her bosom and gently wiped away Catherine's tears. In fact, it's a good thing for you to live separately. With William's personality, staying in the Wong family will only make Grandma angry. Now, you and your son have a chance to slowly develop your relationship, and maybe it will be better. Catherine's eyes lit up, and her tears seemed to stagnate in her eyes, looking a little dazed. Eva sighed deeply and continued. You may have noticed that William has a special personality. Children who grow up in orphanages usually have two extremes. Either they are too well-behaved or too rebellious. But William's personality seems to be much more complicated than either of these two. He paused and turned to look at Gordon. Dad, didn't you ask someone to check? What is the background of that orphanage? There were hurried footsteps coming from upstairs, and the conversation between Michael and Gordon came to an abrupt end. I rushed to the corridor and looked down, with an excited expression on my face. I won the house next to the big tree. Brother, please give the property certificate to Mom quickly. I will ask the dean to help me mail my luggage tonight. Michael was stunned when I called him brother. He had been called brother for so many years, but why did this time it feel a little different, as if it was the first time he was a brother? On the way back to Wong's house, Michael parked the car on the side of the road. The atmosphere in the car became silent for a moment. Eva said softly, I also want to know if the matter of the orphanage is the same as we thought. Gordon did not answer immediately. He looked out the window into the distance, as if thinking about something. After a long while, he slowly spoke. The results of the investigation are similar to what we expected. The child has always lived in an orphanage. There is nothing special about him. He paused and continued. The only difference is that the orphanage has been funded by a wealthy man and has an unusual background. Michael's eyes. I remember if there were other things happening in Hua County. The girls in the welfare home you mentioned. Gordon nodded, as if recalling an unpleasant past. Yes, that was 6 or 7 years ago. There was a popular artist named 7.Y on the internet. His delicate painting style quickly attracted a large number of fans. In just a few months, 7.Y's fans exceeded 5 million, and he was once nicknamed the Second Dimension Doctor. He drew the children in the orphanage, right? Michael interrupted. Yes. Gordon's eyes were a little solemn. The artist told the story of a group of orphans through his comics. Although it was about the setting of an orphanage, he did not exaggerate the misery of the children. Instead, he made these children look lively, cute, and full of childlike fun. Even those simple daily lives can always move people and make them laugh and cry. Michael's eyes sparkled. That sounds interesting, but why does it cause such a big stir? Gordon sighed. As the plot progressed, some details in the comics began to make people feel disturbed. The children were just practicing for charity at the beginning, but later they were frequently taken to see an uncle, and each time they came back, they brought expensive gifts. Some children even suddenly fell ill and were bedridden. What's more disturbing is that some of the children had obvious bruises on their bodies. Eva frowned. That's not right. The comic itself is a healing one. How could there be such strange details? Gordon said in a low voice. This is the turning point in the story. The comic begins to shift from heartwarming to horrifying. Readers in the comments section began to doubt, and some even said they dared not to read on. Michael also looked uneasy. So, how did the comic end? Gordon's eyes became heavier. In the last chapter, a new character appeared in the story, an outsider. He came to the orphanage, and that afternoon, he had a great time with the children until it was getting dark. He was holding a black chess piece in his hand, ready to leave, and accidentally discovered a closed room. The scene inside made him hold his breath. On the messy bed, there were children's hairbands and clothes scattered. What shocked him even more was that the child who should have been playing in a safe environment had bruises all over his exposed skin. Just as he stared at this disturbing scene, a pair of turbid, bloodshot eyes suddenly appeared in the window and met his gaze directly. At this moment, the penultimate frame of the comic book, the monster-like I stared at the outsider. And in the last frame, the black chess piece slipped from his hand and fell on the dusty ground, breaking into pieces against the pure white background. The story ends here. In the lower right corner of the last frame, it is written, "This story is adapted from real events, written by 7.Y. The artist 7.Y gained millions of followers overnight, and the police stations in every city received calls for help. Everyone was looking for every clue in the comics, trying to piece together the truth that was covered up. Finally, the hacker took action and exposed the artist's IP address, and the focus was finally drawn to Hua County. This matter attracted the attention of the higher-ups, and an investigation team was quickly dispatched. The final investigation results caused an uproar in the wealthy circles across the country. and even the Wong family was greatly affected. Memories all revived. Michael was silent, with deep thoughts written between his eyebrows. When the incident happened, William was not in the same orphanage. Gordon suddenly interrupted him, his eyes as sharp as a knife. According to my investigation, William's orphanage was too poor, so it took in very few orphans, and most of them were children with disabilities. The most important thing is that after I found William's whereabouts, I had an online communication with Dean Sunday. Gordon continued calmly. Dean's son is not the kind of person who would participate in these transactions. Hearing this, Michael relaxed a little. His shoulders were no longer tense. He took a deep breath and seemed to relax a little. But Gordon did not stop talking and said coldly, "However, William's character is obviously not formed in an ordinary environment. I suspect that there is something wrong with the investigation results. I will have someone check it again." He looked at Michael and continued, "You received a temporary travel notice today, right? You will go on a business trip as usual tomorrow, and I will take care of the things at home." Michael nodded, started the car silently, and drove towards Wong's house. 2 days later, I waited for my express delivery. The courier came in the hot sun, sweating profusely while I leaned against the shade of the tree with a pinch of ice water in a daze. Someone once said that I was like a dandelion that was only suitable for growing in the wild. When the wind blew, I could float all over the world, and when the wind stopped, I could take root anywhere. Although I have always sneered at such literary statements, because that person knew me too well, I had to be wary of every word he had said. So I was also a little uncertain whether I could really find what I wanted in this piece of golden soil and then live happily and contentedly as I had longed for many years. I leaned against the tree trunk, my eyes empty, and lost my mind for a moment. Can those people in the Wong family who are related to me by blood really meet my expectations? Just as I was lost in thought, a figure walked over. Ryan held up an umbrella and said jokingly, "Brother, I heard that Olivia took you to the Cheen family's private territory yesterday, which even Olivia has never been to. Are you ready to get engaged to Olivia? Although her family background and abilities are impeccable, she is a cripple." Ryan had just finished speaking when a smug smile appeared on his face, as if he was expecting my angry reaction. However, when he met my cold eyes, his smile froze instantly. I sneered disdainfully and responded, "If what you want to say is that my parents asked me to come back so that you wouldn't be wronged, then you can leave now." Ryan didn't seem to hear me and continued to chatter. "When your mother took you out of the Wong family, everyone in the circle said that you were a jinx, but I always spoke up for you, so you don't have to thank me." After saying this, he mentioned coming to see his mother today. We spend time together every week. Sometimes we learn cooking. Sometimes we learn illustration. "Brother, do you want to come with us?" I suddenly stopped and looked at his face. Ryan's face flashed with sarcasm, and his eyes were full of expectation, as if he wanted to see my angry expression. However, when his eyes met my cold eyes, his smile became stiff and his face gradually turned pale. I opened the iron door of the villa without hesitation, leaving Ryan standing behind in shock. He sneered and put away the parasol, whispering, "It was you who didn't allow me to go in to find my mother. It's just right. Thank you for taking the initiative to give me this opportunity." After returning to the house, I sat directly on the sofa, my eyes fixed on the motionless figure outside the iron gate under the scorching sun. As time passed, Ryan began to feel dizzy. The scorching sun made him feel more and more uncomfortable, and sweat soaked his clothes and hair. Occasionally, he looked up and glanced at me in the window, who was still as calm as a mountain. Ryan thought in a daze, "Don't come to let me in. Don't be afraid of taking responsibility. Just keep watching, preferably until I faint here from heat stroke." He gradually felt that he could no longer hold on, and the scene in front of him became more and more blurred. When he finally couldn't see anything around him clearly, a subtle fear suddenly rose in the depths of his mind. "I won't really die here, will I?" He closed his eyes tightly, imagining that he would fall down like this and no one would come save him. Suddenly, there was a vague sound of a door opening outside, followed by the sound of brakes. Ryan's mouth curled up a sneer and finally let himself faint. 1 minute ago, Catherine came downstairs. She stretched, obviously just waking up from a long lunch break. When she came downstairs, she saw me leaning on the sofa in a daze, looking out the window casually with empty eyes. She also followed my direction and looked outside, and her pupils shrank suddenly. "Is that Ryan?" Catherine asked shakily. I hummed lightly. Catherine's voice became dry. "How long has he been standing there?" I glanced at him indifferently. 2.5 hours. Hearing this answer, Catherine was stunned for a moment, then rushed out the door, running hurriedly on the road, even bumping into the coffee table and dropping a shoe. But she didn't seem to care about these. She rushed out of the villa door, the heat wave hit her face, and tears rolled in her eyes. "Ryan," she shouted this word almost in despair. At that moment, the figure outside, who was almost suffering from heat stroke, trembled slightly and fell down softly. Eva's car stopped outside the door. He quickly picked up the unconscious Ryan and said anxiously, "What's wrong? Is it a fever or a heat stroke? What's going on?" Catherine's lips trembled. She clutched his arm tightly, and a trace of helplessness appeared in her eyes. "Ryan, how could he become like this?" she muttered to herself. The doctor arrived quickly and, after a checkup, confirmed that Ryan had suffered from heat stroke. The doctor frowned and said, "You guys are too careless. Ryan's physical condition was not good to begin with. This kind of thing must not happen again in the future." Catherine sat on the sofa, using an ice pack to cool Ryan down, with her head down, seemingly not intending to respond to anyone. I was watching from a distance. Dr. Zhou glanced at me, with a hint of mixed emotions in his eyes and a slight curl of his lips. But he was soon frightened by my gaze. The black pupils penetrated him accurately, as if seeing through all his inner thoughts. Dr. Zhou was stunned for a moment, even feeling a little uncomfortable, and turned away in a hurry. The air in the huge villa seemed to freeze. We didn't speak to each other, only silence. Suddenly, Eva couldn't bear it anymore. She grabbed my wrist and dragged me out of the room. I looked at her with wide eyes. "What are you doing?" "Pa." A crisp slap sounded, and Eva looked at me coldly. "What are you doing?" "I just want to ask you why you treat Ryan like this. Do you think this really makes you feel comfortable?" I touched my face. My thoughts were a little slow. "No, he wanted to die." I paused, looked at Eva, and said coldly, "If it were you, being locked outside the door under the scorching sun, would you choose to leave or stand there? Who doesn't know that he is using a self-torture tactic?" Eva sneered. "Even if we know he is using a self-torture tactic, once his life is in danger, even if there's only a 1 in 10 chance, we must stop him." I tilted my head and looked at her with a sneer on my face. "So, what you mean is that even if he is seeking death himself, I am the bystander who is wrong, right?" Eva's pupil shrank, and she gritted her teeth. "He's not an unrelated stranger. He's the son that my parents have raised for 20 years, and he's the brother that my brother and I have called for 20 years. Do you know what this means?" I glanced at her calmly and said coldly, "Does it have anything to do with me?" Eva was shocked by my words and stood there in a daze. She was silent for a moment, and her voice choked with sobs. "Are you crazy? This is a human life." I looked at her coldly, but I had already made up my mind. I said yesterday that no one is allowed to enter this house without my permission. You agreed to my request at the time, but you violated it in just one day. Wang Ruoshi walked forward, holding my shoulders tightly, and her voice rose involuntarily. "Do you really understand what you are doing? No matter how much you hate him, you can't let him die so easily." I interrupted her and said in a cold voice, "He doesn't cherish his own life. Why should I cherish it for him? Or do you think I will become kind just because you say a few nice words?" I sneered, my eyes as sharp as a sword. Wang Ruoshi was silent for a moment, and the hand that was squeezing my shoulder gradually became stronger. A trace of pain appeared on her face, as if she was struggling internally. "Do you know who you are causing the most pain to right now?" There was a tremor in her deep voice. "It's Mom. She has tried her best to get close to you and mend the rift between you and her. Yesterday, between you and the Wang family, she chose you without hesitation." I was stunned for a moment, and my emotions were a little shaken. She continued, "But what did you show her today? Two children killing each other. How cruel it is for a mother. Do you really understand?" Wang Ruashi's eyes revealed endless sorrow, as if this family dispute had made her unable to bear it. The sun shone on us, and the scorching temperature was almost suffocating. Wang Ruashi looked down at me with a complicated expression and a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth. "Can you imagine standing here for 2.5 hours in such a high temperature?" I just looked at her quietly and said calmly, "Is it very hot? You know that the temperature here often reaches 40 degrees every summer, and there is no air conditioning or electric fans in the orphanage." I suddenly sneered and looked away. "I have spent 17 summers here, and every summer is this hot. For me, this is just a habit." I forcibly pried her hand away from my shoulder and reached out to touch my face. The cold touch on my face seemed to bring me back to those lonely years. "You hit me once. The last time I was hit was 10 years ago." Wang Ruashi's fingers trembled slightly, as if she was struggling with some inner struggle. Her eyes looked a little uneasy, as if she was also wondering what she had done wrong. I took a step forward and looked her straight in the face. "You know, I should have made you pay 10 times the price, but because we are related by blood, this can all be offset," I said coldly, "but only this time. Don't try to do that to me again." I turned and walked into the villa, my heart as calm as dead water. I walked to the sofa and stopped for a moment. I saw Catherine still lowered her head, as if silently enduring something. I looked at her back and said calmly, "When he wakes up, let him leave here by himself. If there's a next time, I will still make the same choice. Tell him that if he is not afraid of death, just continue." I didn't look back and continued to go upstairs. Ryan had already woken up on the sofa, but he pretended to be still asleep until Catherine's concerned eyes woke him up. He spoke slowly, his eyes full of tears. "Mom, are you really going to live here forever? Will I never be able to see you again in the future?" Catherine held his hand, tears in her eyes, heartbroken, but she said nothing. Ryan's tears dripped onto the floor, carrying endless pain. At this time, Wang Ruashi walked in and saw Ryan's face full of tears and complicated eyes. "Sister, thank you," he whispered, as if he had thousands of words to say in his heart, but didn't know where to start. Ryan coldly, her eyes like a knife. "If you were so grateful, why did you stand outside the door for so long? I thought you would definitely open the door." Ryan didn't answer. His tears continued to fall, as if his heart was filled with endless confusion and puzzlement. Wang Ruashi remained indifferent, as if all this had nothing to do with her. "You really are a person who repays evil with kindness." She smiled, with a hint of sarcasm in her voice. "He made you lose face at the banquet, but you actually thought you would get his kindness." Ryan's face turned pale instantly, and the fear and helplessness in his heart made him tremble. He quickly reached out to grab Catherine's hand, his eyes full of anxiety. "Mom, I know I'm very emotional, but I don't want you to bear this alone. Come back with me. I will ask Grandma to let my brother stay at home. Our family should be together." Catherine looked at her son's eyes, feeling mixed emotions. She sighed deeply and said softly, "Ryan, I'm sorry for making you suffer." She stroked his hair gently, her voice as gentle as a breeze, calming his inner anxiety. Ryan's eyes sparkled with hope, and he trembled as he spoke. "Mom, will you agree to go back with me?